Hi there, and welcome to this week's edition of TV Coast to Coast, our regular chat where we get together and talk about TV, and we have our rotating team of TV critics from across the country here today. I'll start with yours truly. I'm Christy Turnquist. I'm with The Oregonian and OregonLive.com in Portland, Oregon. We've also got Vicki Hyman from the New Jersey Star-Ledger and NJ.com, and Dave Walker of the New Orleans Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. Hi, Dave.
Hi.
So obviously the biggest story in the TV week is the upcoming run of final episodes of Mad Men. The first of the final 7 episodes of the show comes this Sunday, and it's the last 7 episodes of the 7th season, and good grief. And we've had to wait a heck of a long time for these final episodes, but I will say based on this episode, it's been worth waiting for. I've just been very impressed by this episode, and it just, I just can't help but think about the impact that this show has made. Certainly, it's one of the best TV series of the past decade. It's certainly one of the most analyzed and written about. If it had as many viewers as it had people writing about it, it would be just the phenomenon of all time. But I think what the show has accomplished is, you just can't underestimate it. I mean, it's been a portrait of the decade of the 1960s. It's featured this gallery of characters whose lives kind of illustrate all the trends that were converging in that most tumultuous of decades. We've seen vast changes in the roles of women, in how minorities are viewed, in how people's personal behavior has evolved. Let's hope it's evolved. Ideas about parenting as they were back then, in sharp contrast, let's hope, again, to how they are now. And at the center of it all has been this just fascinating character of Don Draper, played beautifully by John Hamm. And he's still underrated as far as I'm concerned. He's done just such an indelible job with this character. I mean, on the one hand, we have watched Don Draper sort of go through this decade of the 60s working in the advertising business. It's been fascinating to watch him work in his profession, but beyond that, it's been a portrait of without being too pretentious about it, his existential struggle. He grapples every week with, who is he, and what does his life mean, and what has this all been about? And there's the Peggy Lee song, "Is That All There Is?" that appears in the first episode of these final episodes, and that cuts right to the core. I mean, he's been confronting some of the most basic questions people can confront no matter what the decade. What has my life meant? How do I find satisfaction? And it's the kind of thing that makes Mad Men particularly dear to my heart, because Matthew Weiner, the creator of the show and its guiding force, and this wonderful cast who've created this gallery of characters, have managed to do all this, keep us in suspense, keep us fascinated, without resorting to so much of the very familiar TV formula. There haven't really been cops and robbers, there haven't really been crimes, there haven't really been lawyers or doctors, or violence, except for one rather notorious scene with an out-of-control lawnmower. One of my favorite moments in the show's history, but admittedly quite atypical. I know I'm feeling pretty verklempt about Mad Men coming to an end, and I know we all have our thoughts about the show, and we all have thoughts about some of those favorite moments. And anyway, I just kind of wanted to open the floor. I think I'll toss to you, Vicki. What are some of your thoughts?
Well, you talked a lot about Don Draper, and I know a lot of men in my life are like Don Draper, living the dream, even when he's like, this poor, sad, alcoholic lush in bed with like 2 different women in one night, doesn't remember either one of them. I love Peggy. I mean, Peggy to me is the heroine of the show. It's like almost like Don is in descent and Peggy's in the ascendancy, and I love watching how they sort of come together and help each other out. They're at odds. There are so many moments, and what I love about Mad Men are these wonderful little moments. AMC replays Mad Men on Sunday mornings, and I will, wake up, go downstairs, have my coffee, and sort of fast forward through some of the episodes looking for those little moments that I just adore. And it's the details that are offered sort of without commentary, and like a really tiny one that always gets me. I think it's from the first season where Betty and Don and the kids are having a picnic, and it's like this beautiful lawn, and their cars in the background, and they finish, and they get up, and Don picks up the sheet or whatever, and like just tosses the garbage that's been on the sheet and leaves it there and walks off, because that's what happened back then. I guess you could say it's also kind of like, a comment on their character, but I think that's just what people did back then. It wasn't
Absolutely.
like, oh, we have to recycle, do this. It's like those little things that just offered no comment. This is how it was. But to go back to Peggy and Don, I know people will talk about the suitcases being, kind of the pivotal moment for them, but there's one moment before and one moment after, and it's the moment that comes when Dawn, you finally see what happened to Peggy after she had the baby at the end of season 1, because she just shows back up at work and nobody really knows where she's been. And so they have a flashback to her being in either like this postpartum ward or maybe even a mental ward. And he's like, where have you been? And she has no idea what happened to her, and she doesn't know what to do. And he leans forward, and there's this like wonderful creak of the upholstery when he leans forward, the light coming across his face, half in shadow, half in light. It's amazing. And he's just like, whatever they want you to do, do it. And then a little bit later, it will shock you how much it never happened. And it just totally epitomizes exactly where Dawn is at the moment, but also, giving very valuable advice for Peggy to move on. And I probably watched that scene, 25 times. It's so amazing. And then, of course, if we fast forward to the first part of the last season, where Don finally returns to Sterling Cooper, and he's sort of been replaced by the cardigan-wearing Lou, who we all hate. And Peggy is basically his boss. He's writing like coupons for her. And it's a very awkward, tense situation all throughout. And then finally at the end, when she's sort of stymied by this burger presentation she has to do, she's sitting in I guess what was Don's old chair. And she's like, basically, what do I do? And I can't remember the exact line, but he's like, well, basically, I abuse anybody who can help me, and then I go take a nap. And she says, done. And they're back to being equals. I don't know if they're back to being equals, but I think they finally are equals in each other's eyes. And it's a beautiful moment. Of course, it ends with them dancing to Sinatra, which, just like getting very verklempt here, too. So what I think is the beauty of Mad Men are these like lovely little moments. It doesn't have to be a whole episode, although there are great episodes like Shut the Door, Have a Seat, or the Caper episode that are just wonderful. But I mean, who did not shed a tear at Carousel when Don is talking? I mean, it's just done so beautifully. And after Mad Men came on and there was a whole bunch of period pieces, people are like what, the core of Mad Men is that it's a period piece? Wake up, television. That is not what Mad Men is. Yes, it's about a very specific period, but it's about the people in the period. And TV creators can't get that. It's crazy. Anyway, go on and on. Dave, what do you think?
Well, I'm with I don't care how it ends for any of them except Peggy. I want it to end well for Peggy so bad. To me, she was like, yes, Don Draper, who I think a lot of viewers my age think of more or less as dad, and Peggy's more like a big sis, and you pull for her, you always have, and it at the end of last season it looked like things were going okay, but I really wanted to end well for Peggy more than anyone else. The amazing thing about the show to me, I think, was that it had so many different kinds of entry points for viewers. There was the period, there was the workplace drama. I was fascinated by that world. Who created the modern consumer life that we have now. Those men, and mostly men and some women in that office, were, primal architects of desire. They created the 24/7 consumption culture that we've got in a lot of ways, working hand in hand with television in a lot of ways. And I was always fascinated by that world, and I loved the work life. I loved the hierarchy in the office. I loved Roger and Bert and all of them, and Joan, and all of that life. I loved the suburban ennui, something that was dealt with a lot in novels and literature over the years, and even during the time that it was happening, but really not so much on television. And but more than anything, the way I connected to this show was through its music, and I wanted to just touch on that a little bit. In many ways, like a lot of things on Mad Men, it was a continuation of things that were established by The Sopranos, and that was David Chase's goal from the beginning for Sopranos was to have great music in the show to help tell the story, great montages and great music commenting on the action throughout. Vicki mentioned My Way, which was one of the lovely moments in the show. And there were many others, and some were overt and some were actually really very subtle. The closing credits music on Mad Men was as much about what you just watched as anything that anyone said. From the very first season, when Bob Dylan's Don't Think Twice, It's All Right concluded, an episode where Don didn't go with the family on Thanksgiving. He stayed home and worked. And I thought it really was resonant in explaining his mood in ways. The use of Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles signaled a whole entrance of a psychedelic era. Obviously, the live version, Zooby Zoo, which everyone thought was a great sensation. That was a terrific moment. Bert Cooper in the last frames of the last episode that we saw, singing, coming to Don in hallucination, and then backing into his office and the door closing by itself, I just thought was, and also a nod to Robert Morse, who'd been a song and dance man on Broadway, and in the era that Mad Men depicted. My two favorite sequences musically, though, were both Don Draper's, and one was the scene on the moving sidewalk in LAX, set to I'm a Man by, I think, the Spencer Davis Group. And, it was a guy in a cool hat on a moving sidewalk, but the sequence just took me to the setting so beautifully. Then the other one was shorter and briefer and a little bit more winky and jokey, but it was a scene where Don comes out of a gym set to Satisfaction, where the lyrics refer to how white his shirt could be, and he pulls out a smoke right when the lyrics mention that, and I just smiled ear to ear at that. And one of the many musical connections I made through that show. Very smart, and also very poignant over and over on that show. So I'll miss the composition that the music added to all the time on that show. And I'm going to get out of Mad Men here and say, on a related note, there are two PBS music specials that are very recommendable this week, aside from Mad Men, and that's the Annie Lennox and Billy Porter specials. They are Friday and my mom, both excellent. And also this Sinatra documentary that's on at the same time as Mad Men, Sunday night, which is terrific. It sucked me in last night and I could not stop it. Alex Gibney, and there's no talking heads except for Frank. It's very unique. I should say very unique. It's a unique structure and execution of a topic I know really well, and I learned dozens of cool new things about it. So I'll get out of that and say thank you and farewell to Mad Men, and we'll probably circle back and get back to it once it's all over, but I'm really excited about these final episodes, and for all the reasons that both of you guys mentioned, and also for the music.
Oh yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with both of you. I mean, the thing about this show is just there's just so much to appreciate about it, because Matthew Weiner is a man who knows what he wants, and he's been able to control this show, and every element of it is pretty much exactly as planned. And it's, in addition to giving us all that we've had to think about, it's just such it's such a pleasure to watch the show. I mean, just the beautiful, terrific, clever costume design by Janie Bryant, who's just done an outstanding job throughout the show. The costumes, the hair, the production design, Dave, you mentioned the music, the furniture. I mean, just sort of watching the 60s unfold has been such a pleasure. And I totally agree with you, Vicki, that relationship between Don and Peggy has been fascinating. And in some ways, they're kind of the same character, but just different eras. I mean, they both sort of came from humble backgrounds, built their way in their career through their talent, really. Nobody gave them that much help, a little bit of mentoring along the way. But it's been fascinating to sort of watch how both of them have sort of adapted to what people need to adapt to. And I'm with you, Dave. I'm fascinated to see what happens with Peggy. And I hope good things happen to her.
Yeah.
Well, also, I think the other interesting relationship, which is certainly brought forth in the first episode that's coming up on Sunday, is the relationship between Joan and Peggy, which was, kind of antagonistic and fraught towards the beginning. And I loved how they would sort of step back, they'd see what was going on around them and with the men in their lives, and just like sit there and have a smoke and be like, yeah, can you believe this? I've really enjoyed that relationship too. And also one musical moment that I wanted to mention that Dave did not mention that kills me every time is at the end of last season where Don finally brings his kids to show them the house where he grew up in.
Yeah.
And Judy Collins, I'm getting like goosebumps right now. Okay. And Judy Collins, Both Sides Now comes on, and they're looking at the house, and Sally and Don just share this look at each other over the heads of the boys, and it's like, she's like, okay, I get it. And he's like, yeah. And it's wordless, and it's so beautiful. And with that song in the background, which is like, the whole orchestration, that, it's so 60s. It's an incredible way to end the season.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we definitely will have more to talk about with Mad Men as it goes along, but I think that's probably going to do it for this week. We probably all have to get to our computers and start writing about Mad Men. I know I do.
For sure.
So thanks, you guys, and thanks for watching, and we will see you next time on TV Coast to Coast.
Take care,
guys.
you two. Bye-bye.